again to Playmakers Alley. Today we're going to talk about the ways in which you can move the ball in American football, as well as the ways in which progression occurs a little bit within American football, because the two are heavily linked. Now, essentially in American football, there's really only two ways to move the ball, if you exclude special teams, which I'll touch on a little bit later. That's either running the ball or passing the ball. Now, running the ball is essentially the ball is given to a player who, with the ball in hand, runs with the ball with the target of gaining yardage or gaining distance towards ultimately getting towards the end zone. Now, the way the ball is given to them is usually either it's directly handed to them, or it might be a short toss or short pass, but that pass is usually never past the line of scrimmage, or never past where the ball was initially placed before a given snap. So it doesn't matter if that short pass is forwards or backwards. Generally, it'll be forwards for specific reasons that benefit the offense at the time. But that's essentially one of the ways you run the ball. The ball is given to someone. They run with the ball in their hand, looking to gain as much distance as possible, or ultimately get into the scoring zone at the end of the field. The only other way of moving the ball is to pass the ball. Now, this is done by once the ball is snapped from where it was placed initially by the referee, the QB or the person throwing the ball, which is generally the QB, they then pass the ball or look to take the ball and throw it through the air, and the main aim of gaining the distance or working towards the scoring zone is by the ball traveling in the air. So, running the ball or passing the ball, those are the only two ways to progress to move the ball in American football, other than special teams, which I'll touch on a little bit later. When it comes to passing the ball, in American football, you're allowed to pass the ball only once per given play. So that's often used straight off the snap. Once the QB gets the ball, they normally throw it forwards. But you can actually pass it or throw the ball as many times as you want. It's just that it can only go forward once in any given play. Now, that's the two ways in which you can move the ball: running the ball or passing the ball. In terms of defensively, when dealing with the run, we will generally use gap principles in order to defend it. So essentially, any of the possible alleys or lanes in which they can look to run in, we will look to try and have someone assigned to that lane or alley and deal with that run and stuff that run and stop them gaining any distance, or certainly not getting to the scoring zone. Whilst in the past, defensively, we will look to use coverage rules or coverage principles in order to defend them throwing the ball with the same objective in mind. Now, objectively speaking, defending the run is not necessarily easier, but can be done to a much higher degree than defending the pass, just because of the fact that in terms of the pass, you have people running around in space, and there's a lot of space within the field, and you have people trying to cover that space without knowing what they're going to do. Whilst in the run, you essentially have enough people to plug up each of the lanes, so that if offense and defense are very balanced, it's easier to execute consistently, stopping them gaining any yardage on the run than compared to with a pass, because the variables are highlighted. So that's a brief touch on how you can progress the ball in American football: running the ball or passing the ball. Now, the other ways in which you have progression in this game is through special teams. And this is a minor but very important part of the game. So the majority of the game will be via the other two means, because there'll be offense and defense on the team. But then this part, special teams, it's called specials. The way I remember it's called specials anyways, because you always have a specialist on the field. The specialist positions are a kicker, what is known as a snapper, and what is known as a holder. You will either have one or all of these guys, or a number of these people on the field at any given time. Now, the kicker, being quite obvious, they kick the ball. The snapper is the person whose sole job is essentially, from where the ball is placed for that given play, is to throw it towards the kicker with pinpoint accuracy and ideally at some pace, for them to get a good kickoff. And then The holder is someone that essentially, once the ball's snapped, if it's on a given special teams play, will hold the ball to make it easier for the kicker to have an accurate kick for a given play. Now, in terms of the special plays or special teams plays, the ones that currently exist in the game are kickoff, and by association, kickoff return. So you either kicking the ball to the opposite side, or they are receiving the ball if they're kickoff return and looking to take the ball back. Punt, which is essentially where a collection of guys or people will step on the field looking to boot the ball away. And then PAT or field goal, which is PAT standing for point after touchdown, and then field goal is a scenario where your offense is stalled, but you're within a distance that you feel that your kicker or your special team can get the ball between the goalposts, then you'll bring them on to kick it. And special teams is essentially a way for within the game to have an orderly transition, either of possession or of a specific goal. So generally it's of possession or of a specific goal in terms of point after touchdown and field goal, in a risk-reduced manner for particularly the offense. And what I mean by that, excluding kickoff, because kickoff is essentially a reset for the game. Kickoff is how we start the game. Kickoff is how we start the game. If they're at the beginning of the game, it's how we start the game after a half. It's how we reset the game once a team scores. So excluding kickoff, punt is essentially an orderly transition of change of possession. If you, as an offense, haven't managed to get the required distance via passing the ball or running the ball, you can then bring your special teams on to essentially kick the ball away for the sake of territory. And the reason I say it's a risk-reduced way is within American football, to just briefly touch on this rule, you essentially have 4 opportunities to look to gain a set distance, that distance being 10 yards. And if you gain that set distance within the four opportunities, then you get another 4 opportunities to then gain another set distance to 10 yards. And the goal is to either continually keep gaining these 10 yards and getting a new set of attempts to drive towards the scoring zone, or to just drive towards the scoring zone within your 4 attempts to gain the 10 yards. Now, what most teams will do is after 3 attempts, if you haven't managed to gain the 10 yards after 3 attempts, they will look to kick the ball away, known as a punt. And that is for the sake of putting the opposition, once they receive the ball, because there will be a change of hands of possession, in further territory away from their scoring zone in which they're looking to defend. And that is, as I said, a risk-reduced way of doing that, because if you decide, I want to take the 4th attempt, yes, you'll get the opportunity to get a new set of 4 attempts again, but you didn't make it in the first 3. And now if you don't make it on the 4th one, the opposition are going to receive the ball handed to them at the point at where you're at. So let's say if you're a short distance away from your own end zone, so the zone in which you're defending, the scoring zone for the opposition, you've had 3 attempts, you haven't managed to gain these 10 yards. You can have a 4th attempt to try and gain it and reset it, but if you fail, they're going to get the ball at a short distance from their scoring zone, or you can just kick it away and push them much further away from the scoring zone. And often that's what people will look to do. Whilst PAT and field goal, they are opportunities for a specific goal. PAT is point after touchdown, which is just part of the rules of the sport of the game. But you have the option, if you don't want to try and kick it, if you kick it, you'll gain 1 point. But if you want to try and run or pass the ball into the end zone, you'll gain 2 points. But you only, unlike with other attempts where you will have 4 attempts to gain a specific amount of distance, with a PAT or point after touchdown or points after touchdown, if you go for running and passing the ball, you only get 1 chance. So you can either go for the kick, which generally, if you're at a certain level, even in the Brit Ball game, it's generally automatic if you go for the kick, so it's guaranteed 1 point, or you can have a 1 chance to try and get 2 points and take that higher risk, but it means that you might end up with 0. So that's what I meant by it's a risk mitigated or a risk-reduced manner for an orderly transition, either a possession in terms of punt or for a specific goal in terms of point after touchdown. And then field goal is essentially similar to punt in the sense that, sorry, not similar to punt, similar to point after touchdown in the sense that it's just the case that if you don't make the 10 yards within the 4 attempts that you have, or the 3 attempts that you'll generally use, on the 4th attempt, you can go to try and gain points by scoring it through the upright posts. And that you would do rather than punting it if you're within the kicking range of your kicker. And as I said, with field goal with kickoff and kick return, that's just ways of resetting the game. So that's normally only at the kickoff of the game, kickoff of the second half, and after each team scores, whether that be or puts points on the board, whether that be via touchdown and then an attempt at points after touchdown or a field goal. Now, just to bring this all to a close, with kickoff, the specialist you will have on the field will generally only be the kicker. With punt, you will have the snapper and the kicker on the field. With field goal or point after touchdown, if you're kicking it, you will have the kicker, the holder, and the snapper all on the field. So what I've touched on today is just a brief understanding as to the ways in which you can move the ball. In general play, there's only 2 ways. That's either running the ball or passing the ball. Now that's defended via gap principles in terms of defending the run, and via coverage principles or coverage rules in terms of defending the pass. And then the only other way in which progression happens during the game is via special teams, named aptly special teams because of the specialists that are on it. Their sole job is just to do those things, which are highlighted generally when you play at certain levels. That differs a little bit within the British game, but they're generally still specialists. And then and that's how progression occurs in the game. So catch you later on Playmakers Alley. Stick around. We'll keep going around some of the concepts in terms of understanding the sport, from knowing nothing to being well endowed in terms of how to understand and think about the sport, so that you can use your strengths and weaknesses to be the best possible player you can be. See you. Catch you later.